my cry. At dark midnight was my cry. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world, but give me Jesus. In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus.
And good, bright, and beautiful morning. I am Kimberly Mann. Welcome to Easy Bible Study. Today we are talking about what do you do when you run out of food? I mean, we're in this season right now where there's lots of food all the time because, we're right between that Thanksgiving and Christmas time. And it seems like, Thanksgiving's got a lot of food, Christmas has a lot of food, and there's a lot of food going out. But we're talking in Genesis and we're in chapter 43 today, and there's no food. And let's talk about what do you do when you run out of food? Well, you go talk to your brother. Anyway, I'll be right back. Let's get into it. Be right back. Bye.
You can have all this world, but give me Jesus. In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus.
And welcome back. Thank you so much for joining with me this morning. If you do find any value in this content, do me a favor, click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. Every morning I'm trying to get a video out there. I know we had a big time period. Well, I should let you guys know every day I'm going to drop a little bit of a here's what we're doing and here's why our life is changing. God has been working in us. And I'm going to say this because I'm going to tell you guys about the personal things that have been happening. Partly because it is God working in us, and it's important, I think, for me to express how God works in my life if I'm expecting you to trust God with your life. So, as I said, like, comment, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of our content. I am going to be going into talking about this in just a minute here, but let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in our life. So, if you were here yesterday, you know that we have now moved into our RV and we are staying in here long term, and we are getting our house ready to sell. Well, it's winter time, so we've kind of gone away for the winter and not going to be working on the house so much, although Russ is going back this week to finalize some real estate transactions. But God has been absolutely blessing us and keeping us and making his face to shine upon us. For about 2 years, our real estate business has been just on the edge of things, and God was like, nope, I'm in a waiting thing. And he said, I want you to step out. He told us that we needed to sell our house. Actually, he told me in 2024 that we should sell or in 2023 rather, at the beginning of it, he says, I need you to be prepared to sell your house. I need you to be prepared to let go of your house. And I struggled for a while with that. And then God said, no, this is what I want you to step out in faith. It doesn't seem to make sense that you would get rid of your house, but I want you to step out in faith. And so I told Russ, I said, I think we're supposed to sell our house by the end of the year. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, well, not 100%, but maybe. And it doesn't seem like God wanted that to happen in 2023. But what did happen in 2024 is a lot of things started happening. We've now got a different setup for our real estate business, and we are actually developing a new business that helps people. And if you want to check that out, that will be coming up on the Home for Americans channel that I run. But that is not really up and running yet. But by January, middle of January, that's going to be up and running, and you're going to see a lot of information there. But God is leading and moving, and there's some things that he did this year that made it really clear we need to sell our house. and we should not be in the city of Racine anymore. Doesn't mean we're not going to be in that area. We're still going to be living in the Racine area in the summers and springs, and because we're still very involved in the community. I actually became the vice president of the Kenosha Sport Fishing and Conservation Association. Russ is the president. We just stepped into those roles. Russ stepped in just over a year ago. I stepped in June. So we have not been in those roles for very long, and God has definitely led us to do that, to help them out, get them up and running, and hopefully pass it on to some other people in a much better state than it was than when we actually stepped into doing this. But what we do know 100% is that God wants us to sell our house. So this spring, we will be putting our house up for sale, and we will be going to living in our RV full time for a while. Not for permanent, probably, but definitely for a while. And we're going to be stepping out and doing a lot of faith moves in the next couple of years. We can already feel God working. He's working in our marriage. He's working in the things that he's giving us to make this dream come true when we needed it. He brought us the perfect RV for what we needed. Something that was big enough, but not too big. Just to give you a little bit of a heads up, we have a Windsport. It's a 1998, so it's not new at all. It's a 1998 Four Winds Windsport. Four Winds doesn't exist anymore. They're now owned by Thor. But in 1998, they were owned by, they had their own company, and they were bought out in the 2000s by Thor. But anyway, it is technically a 34H, I think it's called, but it's 36 feet long from tip to toe. And we tow our car behind us, and then that way we have a car with us as well. God provided the RV that we needed at the price we needed in the condition that we needed it. God provided a inexpensive tow dolly as well, to be able to tow our car. God provided us with the money to be able to get the electric bike so that we can actually get more fit and actually begin this ministry / business that God has been leading us to do. And he's just asking us to step out by faith. So what you're going to see from me in the next few months is you're going to see me talking a lot about us stepping out by faith and doing a little bit more and a little bit more. So if you do want to follow along on that journey, I am not going to deny, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. Turn on that notification bell and you will hear a little bit more. But today we are in Genesis 43. That's really what we're talking about. Speaking of people stepping out by faith. Whew. Okay, so today it's all about the famine, and we're in Genesis 43. So hopefully with all my chatting, you've been able to grab your Bible and you've been able to grab your notebook. See, I got my notebook back again. And we're going to do some great notes, and we're going to really go along with this. And of course, if you are a Patreon and you have subscribed through Patreon, then you will get obviously a copy. You automatically get access to all of my notes when I upload them. And I try to upload them at least once a week, get all the notes updated. So you will usually have them, or you can just take your own notes as we go along. But if you're seeing this in like months from now or years from now, joining on Patreon is the best way to gain access to those notes, so you don't have to sit and write them all down. And you can have them in digital form that way as well. All right, so let's get into this. We are going to be in, let's see here. We are in Genesis chapter 43. So let's get into reading God's word. And here we go. All right. And the famine was sore in the land. And it came to pass, when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, Go again and buy us a little food. And Judah spake unto him, saying, The man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. And if thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. And Israel, this is Jacob, of course, said, Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? And they said, The man asked us straightly of our state and of our kindred, saying, Is your father yet alive? Have ye another brother? And we told him according to the tenor of these words. Could we certainly know that he would say, Bring your brother down? They're like, well, how are we supposed to know that? And Judah said unto Israel, his father, Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou, and also our little ones. I will be surety for him, of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee, and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. For except we had lingered, surely now we had returned this second time. And their father Israel said unto them, If it must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, carry down the man a present, a little balm, and a little honey, spices, and myrrh, nuts, and almonds. And take double money in your hand, and the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks, carry it again in your hand. Peradventure it was an oversight. Take also your brother, and arise, go again unto the man. And God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. And the men took that present, and they took double money in their hand, and Benjamin, and rose up and went down to Egypt, and stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, Bring these men home, and slay, and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And the men were afraid, because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, Because of the money that was returned in our sacks at the first time are we brought in, that he may seek occasion against us, and fall upon us, and take us for bondmen and our asses. And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they communed with him at the door of the house. And he said, O sir, we came indeed down at the first time to buy food. And it came to pass, when we came to the inn, that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight, and we have brought it again in our hand. And the other money we have brought down in our hands to buy food. We cannot tell you who put our money in our sacks. And he said, Peace be to you, fear not. Your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. And he brought Simeon out unto them. And the man brought the men into Joseph's house, and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their asses provender. And they made ready the present against Joseph came at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, Is your father well? The old man of whom ye spake, is he yet alive? And they answered, Thy servant, our father, is in good health. He is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads, and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes, and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your younger brother of whom ye spake unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep. And he entered into his chamber, and wept there. And he washed his face, and went out, and refrained himself, and said, Set on bread. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians, which did eat with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men marveled one at another. And he took and sent messes unto them from before him. But Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. All right. And may God bless the reading of his word. We are doing a large passage today because it's really all about the same part of the story. So it's not really a whole lot. It's more about the fact that we got a lot to cover. And so we're in chapter 43, and we've done the whole chapter today, but it's really kind of the same story, and it's a lot of repetition. So we're going to get into that a little bit, but let's start at the beginning of the chapter and break this down. Okay. So first of all, let me get this started. There we go. So we start at the beginning of the chapter, and we're in verses 1 and 2. And very simply, verses 1 and 2 just says the famine's continuing to go on. All right. So we know the famine is continuing. And in verses 1 and 2, the famine continues, and Jacob says, go to Egypt. So writing in our notes here, he says, go to Egypt. Let's get more food. Go ahead and go to Egypt and get more food. And Judah reminds him. Judah goes, Dad, did you forget? We can't go to Egypt. Not unless we're bringing Benjamin with us. And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, why did you tell him that you had a brother? Like, why did you tell him this? Like, did this man have to know that you had a brother? Like, so this is where Judah reminds Jacob. Judah reminds Jacob they need Benjamin to go back. Taking a little second here. And that is really through verses 3, 4, 5. So that's verses 3 through 5. Judah reminds him. And in verse 6, we now see Jacob being referred to as Israel again. Remember, Jacob was called Israel by God. God was the one who said, okay, Jacob, you're going to be called Israel. I'm changing your name. All right. So in verse 6, he comes back and he uses the name Israel. In the Bible, we go back and forth. When you see the word Israel and it's being used as describing a person for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, or Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's referring to Jacob. It's always being used that way. When it's used as a nation, then it's referring to the whole nation of Israel, meaning all the children of Jacob, or Israel, which is his name. But God changed it. He goes, wherefore dealt ye so ill with me as to tell the man that you had a brother? And they're like, verse 6, he goes, why did you tell him? Why did you tell him you had a brother? Let me write this down. Tell him you had a brother. Why did you even tell him this? And they're like, Dad, we didn't tell him. He asked. Dad, he asked. And we were honest. They go, how are we supposed to know? How in the world were we supposed to know? And this is where we go. In verse 7, could we certainly know that he would say, bring your brother down? How could we know this? Like, how are we to know? Don't blame us. How were we to know his request? We didn't know what was in his brain at that time. We didn't know he was going to ask us to bring him down, our brother. And so then Judah steps up again. In verse 9, Judah steps up and he says, look, this is not Reuben this time. Remember, it was Reuben the first time. First, it was Reuben that said, look, send me back with Benjamin and you can have both my sons. This time Judah says, send the lad with me and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou and also our little ones. He goes, I will be surety of him. He goes, I'll bear the blame. So verses 9 and 10, Judah takes responsibility. My pen's acting up a little bit today. For Benjamin. So Judah's taking responsibility this time for Benjamin. And he goes, look, we're really in a bad shape. Like, except for the fact that you didn't want us to take Benjamin, we would have already been back to Egypt because we're kind of starving here. Like, this famine's pretty big. Dad, in verse 11, verse 10, he's like, except we had lingered, and surely now we had returned the second time. All right. So actually that's I had it as verse 7 is where Jacob asked the question, and it's verses 8 through 10 that Judah's like, he's going to take responsibility. He says, I'll take responsibility. He goes, except for this. And then finally in verse 11, Israel / Jacob relents. Okay. He's like, okay, if it must be so, now do this. Take the best fruits. He goes, okay, if you have to take Benjamin, if you really have to take him, because that's what this guy said. You have to take Benjamin. All right, here's the plan. So Jacob relents and lays out the plan. The plan, all right, is first you take back the money you got back and double what you paid before. And a big gift. And what does the gift have? He says, take your brother and arise, go unto the man, and God Almighty give you mercy before the man. He's like, and the men took the present. They took double money in their hand. See, where is it? Okay, here we go. In verse 11, it says, a present, a little balm, a little honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, almond. These are all things that were very valuable in the ancient world. Myrrh was a death and burial spice that was very, very, a little balm, a little honey. Balm, moisture, because the Middle East is so dry, anything that is like moisture related, so things like lip balms and body balms and things like that, very big in the Middle East, even to this day, very big in the Middle East, and very considered more valuable because their skin goes dry so easily. When you're living in that kind of climate, your skin goes really dry really fast. So having oils to put on your skin and balms, as you know, balms are like thicker and they stay on your skin more. Think of it more like having like cocoa butter and stuff like that. And then he's like, take some balm, take some myrrh, take some honey, some spices that maybe the Egyptians don't have that we can, some nuts and almonds. Like almonds are really big. The reason we talk about having Jordan almonds at like weddings and things sometimes, or at least more traditional old fashioned ones back in the day, is because Jordan, the country of Jordan, produces some of the most beautiful almonds in the world, and they sugarcoat them and stuff. And so very popular in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s for weddings. But he's like, take a gift, and a big gift. It should have balm, it should have myrrh, it should have honey, it should have spices, it should have almonds and nuts, and take him a really good, really impressive gift. And maybe God, all right, here's the plan. And maybe he'll be merciful. So that's his hope. All right, that's 11 through 15. All right. Then we get down to 16. So they do this. They take off and they go back and they do it. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said, bring these men home and slay and make ready. Now, when he says slay and make ready, what he's actually saying is, I want you to go out and kill an animal and we're going to serve this to them for lunch. This is going to be a big feast. So he's saying, he's brought my brother home. And in the Bible, you will see this theme played out over and over and over. If you remember the story of the prodigal son, the first thing his father says when he sees him a long way off, the first thing his father says is he turns to his servant. And that's what Joseph does here. He turns to his servant and says, go slay the fatted calf. And basically that's what Joseph is saying here is, go slay an animal. We're going to feast at lunch. We're going to feast and they're going to come to my house and you're going to make sure, because he's welcoming his brother into his household. He's like, Benjamin's here. I've got a reason to celebrate. This is super important. This is super cool. I have my brother. He's safe. He's sound. He's here. We're going to celebrate. Now, the brothers don't know why he's doing this, and they don't even know that he's actually inviting them for lunch. He's turned to his servant and said, this is what I want you to do. And now the brothers are there and they're like, okay. So the first thing Joseph does, Joseph sends them to his house. They don't know that it's supposed to be for lunch. Let's see here. Where am I? Lost my place. Here we go. And make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And they were afraid. All right. 18. The brothers were afraid he was about to punish them. All right, writing this down. They're afraid that he's about to punish them. They say, look, they were afraid because the money was in our sacks. He's going to make us bondsmen. He's going to take our donkeys. He's going to take our animals. He's going to make us servants. That's what a bondman is. It is somebody who is in bondage or bound to him because of a debt that he owes. And there's like, and they came near to the steward. And so the first thing they say is, they was afraid they're going to punish him. So they tell the steward the story. They're not telling Joseph. A lot of people mix that up in this passage. They think that they're talking to Joseph, but they're not talking to Joseph. They're not talking to Joseph at all. They're talking to the steward of Joseph's house, the servant who has been sent to slay this calf. And they tell this whole story. They're like, look, here's what happened. Here's all this what happened. That's 18 through 22. And in verse 23, the servant is probably kind of laughing at them a little bit because he goes, peace be to you. Fear not, your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. And he brought Simeon. So the steward reassures them and brings Simeon. Because remember, Simeon's not been with them when they first arrived. So he brings Simeon back to them. And he's like, well, first of all, don't worry about it. I got your money. I have your money. The steward's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've got your money. Which tells us that whatever money was put back in their sacks, it means that Joseph, out of his own pocket, must have paid for their food the first time around. Because the steward's kind of like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. We have your money. We're good. Your account was settled. You don't have an overdue balance. You don't have a balance you owe us. I've got them. My records show you paid. So I don't know what you're talking about. We've got your money. So the steward reassures them, and then he brings back Simeon. He's like, no, you paid before. There's nothing. There's no problem. Don't worry about it. And he brings him Simeon. All right. And then he brings them into the house. And brings Simeon so they can all wash up for dinner. Keep in mind, they've had a really long journey, and this is the Middle East. You get really dusty and dirty. I think what's interesting here as well is that we don't know what Simeon's been up to all this time. I mean, keep in mind, they took back enough grain. Going to Egypt was not a day trip. It wasn't like they were just popping down there for the day and picking up food. This was probably about a week-long trip at least to get from where they were to Egypt. Maybe longer, but definitely with as many people and the asses that they brought so that they could keep things safe. That this is a long trip. And so they bring all the food back. They eat up all the food. Then they have to go back again. So we're talking about 2 weeks of travel time alone. And then whatever time it took them to eat up all the food and to get to the point of desperate for food that Jacob was willing to send Benjamin down there. And so we're talking about months. What did Simeon do during that time? And this is one of the parts of the Bible where we just don't know. We don't know what Simeon was up to. We don't know if he was relaxing in comfort. He doesn't tell them what he was doing. It doesn't seem like he was a servant because nothing is said that indicates that he's a servant of any kind. It just says he brought Simeon to them. Doesn't indicate that he was in jail. It just says he was kept there. So don't really know what he was doing in that time. Don't really know if he was keeping an eye out on stuff. What's interesting is that Simeon spent all this time near to Joseph and in close proximity to everything that was going on, months. And he still didn't know that Joseph was Joseph. Which means they were not thinking about Joseph. They really seriously thought Joseph was dead. They had no inclination that he wasn't. And certainly no viewpoint that this could be, that the ruler of Egypt essentially was Joseph. That's crazy. So they bring them in and they walk them, they wash up. Let's see here. So that's 23 to 25. Verse 26, Joseph arrives. and they give him his gift. They give him the gift. All right. And let's see here. And they asked him of their welfare. He says, "Your father well? Is the old man alive?" And they answered, "Thy servant, our father, is in good health. He is yet alive." And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. So they give him the gift. They say, "Jacob is alive. Is alive." And they bow down to him. Huh. Wait a second. Wasn't there some kind of a prediction or dream that Joseph had about the stalks bowing down to him? That's kind of crazy. Huh. Those stalks are bowing down and they have made obeisance. This is the fulfillment. This is part of that fulfillment. They bowed down their heads and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes and he saw Benjamin. I mean, he knew who Benjamin was because obviously he already said, "Go slay the fatted calf." He already knew who Benjamin was, but he lifted it up and he became overwhelmed. All right, let's see here. 26 to 28, that was 29. Joseph sees Benjamin and becomes overwhelmed. With emotion. I mean, so much so, he says, "Is this," and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spake unto me?" And he said, "God be gracious unto thee, my son." So he says kind words to Benjamin. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother. What this means is that the very deepest parts of his soul longed to be reconnected to his brother. He had a longing for that connection. And the very bowels of his soul. And he knew he was about to lose it. He knew he was about to lose it. So he finds a private place. He sought where to weep. He's like, "I got to get out of here. I can't show them. I can't show them that I'm about to weep. I can't show them." So what does he do? He enters into his chamber. He steps into his chamber, which we don't know if chamber here means his bedroom or if it means his office. Either way, it's something that was his private space. Was not a place that was interfered with by servants. It was where he could go completely in private and completely be who he wanted to be. And he enters his chamber and he weeps. And then he washes his face. He becomes overwhelmed with emotion. Then he steadies himself and returns. All right. So he washed his face and went out and refrained himself. This is where Joseph chooses to hold his emotions in check. He chooses to hold on to that. He's not going to let his emotions overwhelm him. He's not going to let his love for Benjamin blurt out what it is. He's not going to let go of the secret yet. He still has some tests for them. He knows that they didn't steal the money because he gave it back to them. He knows now that they've at least fulfilled the promise of bringing Benjamin back to him so he could see Benjamin, which was pretty awesome. So he knows, okay, they kept their word, but now let's see what they do. There's going to be another test that's coming up here. But in the meantime, right now, so that's 29 to 31. And in 32, we see that they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians, which did eat by him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto the Egyptians. So Egyptians were not allowed to eat with Hebrews. So that makes it really interesting, because the Egyptians actually know that Joseph is not an Egyptian, because he doesn't eat with the Egyptians, but all the Egyptians around him. But he's also not giving away the game yet to let them know that he's with them. So Joseph is eating by himself, which is the custom. The Egyptians are eating by themselves, which is the custom because they don't eat with non-Egyptians, in this case, the Hebrews. And the brothers are in yet a third section eating. But what Joseph keeps doing is Joseph is being brought food after food after food, and he keeps sending food over to them. So he's sending them. So I think verse 32 is a really interesting verse because Joseph eats alone. He could have eaten with his brothers, but then they would have known the gig was up. They would have known he wasn't an Egyptian, and as far as they knew, he was an Egyptian. Joseph eats by himself. The Egyptians by themselves, and the brothers in a third area. Now, what we don't know is, are these completely separate rooms, or are these just completely separate tables? Like, we can't eat at the same table. So maybe Joseph is way up at the front at this head table all by himself. But see, the brothers might not have thought that was weird because he's the Lord of the Manor. He's the guy who's in charge. Of course, he's the ruler. He's not going to have other people at his table. No. The Egyptians eat over here out of obeisance to him, and they know that they can't eat at the same table as the Egyptians. So it might be more like a head table situation with the Egyptians on one side and the brothers on the other, and Joseph kind of reigning over and being the middleman in this situation, being that thing. So it's definitely, there's three different areas though, because Joseph is not eating directly at the same table as his brothers, because it says that they sat before him, because it does say they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men marveled one at another. It says, wow, like, look at all of this. Like, wow, look, they marveled one at another. They weren't marveling at each other. They were marveling like this is a bad interpretation, in that it's basically they're saying they marveled among each other. In fact, I was able to download, I've been using an app, which I probably should let you guys know about. It is called the Hebrew Greek app. It's just awesome. I love it because I can actually look up Hebrew words on it. Chapter 43. And this is verse 33. So if we look at verse 33 here, the firstborn before him, and they sat, and the youngest according to his birthright, and looked in astonishment. Basically, it's an interlinear, so it kind of breaks it down into the basic Hebrew, how it says it kind of in Hebrew. And it says basically they looked in astonishment at one another. And that's kind of cool. So basically it says the firstborn before him they sat, and the youngest according to his birthright, according to his youth, and looked in astonishment one at another. The men looked at one another in astonishment. So when you see that, it's basically just saying they all sat and they were just amazed. Like, okay, this isn't what we expected. We came back down here. We were expecting to get in trouble. We were trying to avoid problems. We're trying to avoid being like considered criminals. Not only are we not being considered criminals, we're eating lunch with the top dog. And he seated us in, we were seated in birthright order. And this is astonishing. Like what's amazement, astonishment. So the brothers in a third area. So verse 33, the brothers are amazed at what's playing out and what's happening. That's what I'm going to say here. The brothers are amazed. They're absolutely astonished. They're just like, Russ has a great word that he uses, the great British term. They're gobsmacked. Not only are they gobsmacked, but keep in mind the oldest to the youngest. Who's the youngest? Who's the youngest? Benjamin. Benjamin is the youngest, so Benjamin's at the bottom of the table. And Joseph keeps sending, now in verse 34, and he took and sent messes up unto them from before him. So all of the best food was being put before Joseph, because he's the ruler. All of the best food is being put before him, and he's sending food over to their table. He's sending over food for them, messes for them to eat. That's what it means when it says messes. So Joseph sends them his food. Now, this was a symbolic thing in the ancient world. If the head honcho, the ruler, was sending you food from his table, that was considered an honor. It meant you were being honored or blessed or given something special, because you weren't just being prepared a meal and got to eat with him. You were eating with him, meaning you were eating the same food he was. Kind of like, think of it like, the king or the queen of England. I mean, for so many years we thought of the Queen of England, and it's one thing to have been invited to a queen's event. It's another thing. It's kind of like even the president. The president of the United States, there are dinners that the president goes to and participates in. And then there are dinners that the president puts on and invites people to come and be specially honored. That's the difference here. The difference is like a state dinner versus just a dinner that the president is attending. Is it a great honor to be invited to a dinner that the president is attending? Absolutely. And this isn't a political commentary on the current president. That's not what this is about. We're saying that role in general. Is it an honor to be invited to the White House for a dinner? Yes. Is it a bigger honor to be invited to a state dinner where they are honoring really important people? Yeah, that's a way bigger deal. To be invited to the inauguration is a way bigger deal than just being invited to have dinner at the White House, because the president may not even be there for a dinner at the White House. There are lots of dinners held at the White House that the president is not involved in, or the first lady is not involved in. They are other dinners that honor and this, and there are other cabinet members and things. So there's lots of dinners that take place at the White House that are not involving the president. Not only is the president involved. Now imagine if the president, then the food that's being brought to the president that is specially made for him, that is a special honor for him. Now he's taking that food and he's sending it over to you. He's like, you know what? This was made for me in honor of me, but I'm going to honor you by giving. That is what's happening here. And so Joseph sends him his food, and he sends 5 times that to Benjamin, and 5x to Benjamin. Keep in mind that in the ancient world, again, the youngest, especially the youngest of 12, or in this case, he would have seen 11 at their table. The youngest would have been of the least importance. And yet what Joseph is doing is honoring Benjamin above all the others. Now we know, and we're still in on Joseph's secret. We still know that Joseph is honoring him because it's Benjamin, because it's his brother. It's who he loves. But they don't know that. They don't know that's why it's happening. They're just like, this is crazy. And they drank and were merry. They relaxed. They had fun. They enjoyed themselves. And they had a joke with Joseph. They actually were merry with him. They were happy. And that's what Joseph did. But still, another cliffhanger, because Joseph has not revealed who he is. He still hasn't told that. They still don't know. They don't recognize him. Simeon has spent months with him probably and didn't recognize him, or months around him. Now they've had a whole big state dinner and they still don't know who he is. And there's going to be one more test. That's coming up tomorrow when we get into chapter 44. So hopefully this has been a help to you, understanding this passage. Do we know exactly why Joseph doesn't tell them? Well, we'll find that out as we move along. Why Joseph doesn't tell them what he's expecting them to, like what's happening. So we will find that out, and we'll find that out in the next couple of days. But thank you so much for joining with me today. I do really appreciate it. Once again, if you do find any value in this content, do me a favor, click like, subscribe. I would love to see your questions. Click like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. Yes, yes, yes. But drop me a comment below. What do you think? Why do you think Joseph was not telling them? What do you think it was? What was his reason for not telling them yet? Was there a good reason? Or was he just kind of being a jerk? What was it? And I'd be interested to hear what your comments are. So drop me a comment below. I will also see if I can remember to put in the app with the interlinear, and see if and see what happens. See if we can put a link to that in, or I'll mention it, because that interlinear Bible has been really kind of helpful because it's a Greek and Hebrew one. So I was looking for a Greek one, and I found one for Hebrew as well. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Now I get both, and I love it. It's a nice app that just kind of clarifies some of the passages for us. So I don't really know. I mean, in my thing, it just says Greek. Let me see if I can find it here. App info. It just is called Hebrew/Greek Interlinear Bible. And let me see where it was. It's in the Google Play Store. I know that. And it is done by hagiostech.com. And it does have ads at the bottom, but they don't seem to be intrusive ads, which is nice. But you can also purchase it and pay it off. I don't get anything for sharing this. It's just something I found in the last few months that I really liked. It has a lexicon, concordance. It has Strong's, which is what I have in my Greek Hebrew Study Bible, and it has and morphology. So we can talk about that a little bit more later on. But it's a really, really great. It has 4.8 stars, but not a lot of people have rated it. And of course, being it's a Hebrew Greek, it's only had about 500,000 downloads. So that's pretty normal though for something that this impactful, and it's really, really good. So it's called Hebrew/Greek Interlinear Bible, and it's done by Hagios, Hagios Tech.com. So maybe that will help you if you want to add that app to your stuff. Like I said, I don't get anything for promoting it. I just found it really, really helpful. It says this HGI Bible. So I don't know what HGI Bible, other than, well, it's just Hebrew Greek Interlinear. That's what it is. So anyway, yeah. So that's that for you. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again here tomorrow. Today was a little bit long because we did a longer session of the Bible, but we will be better tomorrow, and we'll be better as we go along. But for now, thanks for joining me. Bye for now.
Was my cry at dark midnight, was my cry, give me Jesus, give me Jesus.